It's like what is our biggest enemy? Like North Korean soldiers? I mean, I don't know, right? But anyway, think about that in terms of soldiers armed coming across the border, military age men, 6,000 of them per day, because that's basically what's happening. That's how many people per day are now pouring across the United States border. 6,000 on a slow day, by the way, because numbers are far in excess of that on other days. Could it all be part of a United Nations plan, a World Economic Forum plan? We'll have more on that in a second. But first to Europe. Overnight, thousands more illegal migrants arriving by boat, pouring onto the streets of Italy in Lampedusa, Italy. These are just the images overnight. And just remarkable here, you can see how many people pouring into the, off this boat, and they don't have any room for them anymore. This is on top of the tens of thousands that already arrived over the past few days. You can see fights breaking out, of course, not only from locals, but amongst themselves, in these crowds. Illegals now outnumber the small population 4-1. So the natives that live on this island are like, what the heck? What the heck? And a lot of the natives have been relatively gracious. I mean, they've come out and offered food and stuff and so forth to these people. They've set up tents and all of that. But it's now taking over. And now they're taking over the government control, establishing their own form of government. That's known as an invasion, by the way. Roadblocks set up. You can see these roadblocks set up now and blocking police access so police can't do anything to stop it. I mean, this is by all accounts, an invasion. When you have people taking over main roadways and not allowing police to go through, you're not in charge anymore. I'm reminded of it's like Bane in Dark Knight Rises, and what's his name puts his hand on his shoulder. He's like, you think you're in charge? Yeah. You're not in charge, Right. And that's you're not in charge anymore. You're not in charge anymore, guys. So they've set up these roadblocks. Here is how the BBC is describing it overnight, that this is an act of war against the people of Italy. Watch.
Not since the crisis in 2015 has Europe seen images quite like this. The Deputy Prime Minister describes it as an invasion.
It is obviously organised, financed and prepared. It is an act of war, because if we go on at 6,000 migrants a day, it means collapse for Italian society. I said it at the beginning. What is happening in Lampedusa is the death of Europe.
7,000 migrants crossing the Mediterranean in just 3 days.
Meanwhile, French journalist in Lampedusa admits that the EU politician... But let me just go back a second. You heard him say it's coordinated and it's financed. Now that, to people who are just like tuning in, have never seen this before, you might think to yourself, oh, that's just conspiracy theory, right? No, it's not. We've shown you the money trail. We've shown you the receipts on this show.
It feels crazy.
It feels crazy, and it feels like that can't possibly be. Like, who's financing this? Where's the money coming from? Well, guess what? The money is coming from these global elites. The money is flowing to these individuals as they pour across the borders. They're being financed so that they come in and are part of a migration pattern that is a replacement for the lack of population in these areas, so that they can continue to make money, use slave labor, put them in factories, manufacturing. So a French journalist, this is pretty amazing. He's in Lampedusa, and he's interviewing as many people as he can. And the EU politicians who were there told him not to film or interview the immigrants. They told him just film their feet. Don't show their faces. Don't film them. Don't interview them. Don't talk to them. And they admitted on camera that they're only there for economic reasons. They told him, the EU politicians telling him, they're only here for economic reasons. They're not fleeing any war zone. Although that's the cover story. We're telling you that they're fleeing war zones and the refugees. And these EU politicians are telling this French journalist, they're not refugees. They're here for economic reasons. We're giving them visas. We're planning on putting them into the system. That's the whole point of this. Watch.
Ouais, il vient de m'arriver quelque chose d'un peu fou, c'est que en fait, j'étais tout simplement en train d'interviewer les migrants depuis tout à l'heure, et il y a une dame du coup qui travaille pour l'Union européenne qui est venue me voir en m'expliquant que j'avais pas le droit de filmer les visages de ces migrants-là. Et pourquoi? Parce qu'elle me dit que en fait, beaucoup sont en procédure de visa parce qu'ils viennent de zones de guerre. Depuis le début, vous l'avez vu, les personnes souvent qui parlent francophone, les personnes francophones disent qu'elles viennent, qu'elles ne fuient pas la guerre, mais qu'elles viennent pour des raisons économiques. Et quel est l'argument de cette dame? Elle me dit oui, mais le problème derrière, c'est que lorsqu'on va instruire leur demande de visa, l'ambassade, eh bien, elle va voir le screenshot de votre vidéo et ils vont dire mais vous avez dit à un journaliste que vous veniez pas pour fuir la guerre, mais que vous veniez d'abord pour des raisons économiques, donc nous vous donnons pas ce visa. Et donc je trouve ça assez scandaleux en fait. En plus, elle essaie de me...
That doesn't make sense.
Well, in what way?
Well, she's saying they are here to claim themselves as war refugees. And because they might say on camera that they're there for economic reasons, it would mess up
undermine the narrative.
Their refugee status.
Exactly. Right. Because under UN or under EU charter, right, you can't come out and say that. You can't come out and say, I mean, it's actually a very broad, this is something that Nigel Farage, of course, has been slamming in the UK for a long time, like the overly broad definitions of who gets to be claimed, given asylum, who gets to be claimed as a refugee, and then given government subsidies and is provided healthcare and is provided, housing and given all of these other things.
Right.
So your designation, you need to make sure you're saying certain things. You cannot say that you're here for economic reasons, that you're just here because someone was how do all of these people wind up on one boat in a coordinated landing in Lampedusa? Now, of course, these immigrants are now being bussed through other parts of Italy and then into other parts of Europe. So I've seen videos in Bologna overnight and other areas where they're getting in fights and clashing with police and then clashing amongst themselves from different countries and different rival gangs. This is about censorship. This is about misinformation. The EU politicians are telling him, don't tell the truth. They're telling journalists, don't tell the truth about what's actually happening here. In the U.S. now, we're seeing new video over the past 24 hours, trainloads of illegals being brought into the United States. These are unbelievable images. Fox News got their hands on this. And you can see pouring into, and you don't see any, by the way, you don't see any kids. You don't see any single moms. These are all military-aged men. These are all young men coming in. You can slow the video down and
That's
you can see.
not safe.
You can see
to ride on the outside of a train. Don't do that.
I think that's the least of their worries right now. So one of the largest mass illegal crossings we've ever seen took place, according to Bill Malugin, last night in Eagle Pass, Texas, with Border Patrol telling that over 2,200 people crossed there since midnight. It happened right next to the port of entry as illegal immigrants continue to ignore the Biden administration's message of do not come and do not fear the promised consequences for crossing illegally. Unbelievable as they come in. Just take a look at some of the videos here of the border, and you can see this is an Eagle Pass. Just thousands being bussed in, brought in, coming in by train, coming in by bus, being let right through the border walls. It's remarkable. And this is happening right in broad daylight, and it's happening in the dark of night. Being given money, being given refuge, being bussed away into other parts of the United States. I just can't. And this, by the way, is a new record. So when the Biden administration says that the border is secure, that everything is fine, nothing to see here, they're flat out lying, of course. And the mainstream media is ignoring it because they don't want to hurt President Biden or the Democrats' chances